Um, so I want to thank everybody for everybody on Quarry Street for coming this evening. I know that there were some questions about how we're going to be addressing some of the Ida damage. We're going to be recording this session and putting it up on the website. So for folks who couldn't make it tonight or who have further questions, they can refer back to this. So the council on last Thursday passed a bond ordinance to allow for the temporary management of some of the Ida damage. The goal for that bond, which was a little over $400,000, was to just address what we see as the most critical infrastructure, the stuff that if we don't fix it now, it will get quite a bit worse. And so we've put together a list of those items that we're going to be doing temporary fixes for. Most of these will require another round of intervention from the city, but we felt that it was really critically important that we start working on those projects now. And Quarry Street obviously has several of those issues that are going to require both a temporary fix and a long-term fix. So the goal for the council, myself, our mayor-elect Andrew, is to try and get out the information on what we're going to be fixing. And then over the course of the next several weeks, we're going to be taking those projects out to bid. Once those are out to bid, there's a certain time period, and Cindy may kick it over to you to sort of explain that bid process a little bit better. But basically, we will be John's in the attendee room. We'll be putting out these projects for bid. We'll get a contractor in the next several weeks, and then that they'll be appointed by the council. So we're looking at a timeline of about 6 to 8 weeks before we can really start viably start any of this work. So, I know that there's been a couple of questions. I'm going to give a very brief overview. Cindy and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the complications around, jurisdictional responsibility, particular to Quarry Street, and then we'll kick it over to John to sort of go over those projects, and then we'll take questions. The expectation is we'll be done here at about 6:30-ish. And so if there are further questions after that, we're happy to answer them either via email or in a one-on-one follow-up. So for Quarry Street, there's going to be two portions of this project. The first is addressing the damage on the road between West Amwell and Quarry Street to ensure that that road remains viable and passable through the winter until we can get to a place where we're doing all of our Ida damage road projects. And then the second is addressing that steep slope where above the parking area, which will include some tree removal, stabilization of those banks, and sort of shoring that up to ensure that there's no further damage when if we have a rainy or heavy precipitation winter. Cindy, do you want to talk a little bit about the retaining wall and the research around that retaining wall?
Sure. So we went back through our records to the time when the townhouses were built and that retaining wall was put in. And the retaining wall was actually put in by the people building the townhouse, and it's not on city property. It's on the property that is deeded to multiple property owners. So we cannot legally do work on private property, and FEMA will not fund the city's portion of that to do on private property.
So where the slope, we have a responsibility to maintain that slope as a part of a larger easement with JCP&L. Unfortunately, we can't address the issue with the bank stabilization through that wall, and so that's going to be something that the property owners are going to have to address either as a group in those townhouses or individually. So with that, John, do you want to sort of go over and do a quick review of what those two projects are going to look like in a little bit more detail?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I apologize. I just lost my VPN, of course, but I'm back in.
Great.
Always happens that way. But as the mayor reference, there's 2 locations on Quarry Street, which we've identified as emergent repair areas. And what I'd like to do is share my screen if you're comfortable with that.
We do.
Okay. And see if this works. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. So the first area I'll talk about is the area along the road itself. The area that was washed out along Swan Creek, which encroached closer to the roadway areas. You can see from the pictures, you know, I'm sure you know this from driving and passing this every day. But you know, right now the work that had been performed was done through the municipal limit up in West Amwell, where you know, the sediment and the stone, the deposits that had washed downstream were basically repositioned temporarily that they've done. You know, we're going to look to do something similarly temporarily to get that stabilized, repair the asphalt along the roads just for the winter months, plowing and additional icing. So, you know, we saw that as an emergent responsibility we're going to address. So that is the first area. And our plan has included, you know, what you see here, kind of this bubbled area is what we're representing right now with those, that span of Quarry Street. There's some additional photos you can see. The other area that the mayor and Cindy talked about is along that parking area. As you could see, there's a couple photos. This was earlier, initially after Ida, when we had the trees hanging out for some time. They're since gone, right? But this is an updated photo below it. But we still have stumps. We still have an area that's basically been, you know, eroded from where this tree came down. You know, that is an area of concern we want to stabilize. Initially, we will look with some, you know, stronger stone, some fill in there to make sure that it doesn't wash or deeper erode as part of our temporary stabilization measures. And you know, the area of the wall itself, once that tree, the weight of the tree was taking off of that, is not in terrible condition. Yeah, it's been repositioned a little bit. It doesn't look too unstable. It hasn't changed its position over time, what I've been monitoring thus far. But these are the areas which, you know, that we'll be looking into. And
do you want to talk a little bit about what that stabilization is actually going to look like how we're going to accomplish that?
Sure. Well, we would envision a contractor is going to be using most likely a backhoe. We will be using right now probably medium to larger size stone and fill deposits to put in this embankment. Right now, we're concerned more to stabilize it. You know, if we do have winter, you know, once the snow melts and everything, that will create you know, additional runoff here. So we want to make sure it's stable. You know, eventually long term, you know, we're going to want to have stable vegetation throughout here. I think that's more of a long-term approach. And not going to be able to get trees up there right now. That's more of a spring or fall planting effort, but eventually you would have you know, stronger root growth in this area. I think that's something we're going to need to do. But the area itself, which is, it's hard to see in this photo, we can zoom in a little bit, but it's kind of deeply channelized, eroded here where the water's starting to form it. So really, Mary, to answer your question, you know, we would see some stone almost similar to what you see here, you know, on these gabion baskets, something along those means right now to get that kind of compacted in here, stabilize this area. Again, we want to prevent the water from further eroding this. Once we probably get through spring, we get some drier months, we could start looking into more long-term measures here, which would be, you know, getting just a fill embankment in place. Eventually, we can get back to some root systems here or some matting to get some some development or some growth here, but that's more long-term.
Okay, great. So I think at this point, we'll open up for questions from community members. Haley Overington.
And Mayor, one other point too, just to add in, the contractor would be getting any of these loose tree remnants out of the way as well. Obviously, we don't want that falling, sliding down, creating more of an issue. So, what's left behind would be removed. Then with his backhoe, his bucket, they'll kind of gently try to grade this. So it's more of a continuous slope here as opposed to the rutted areas. But yeah, all that debris would come out.
Great.
Okay, Haley, if you could state your name and address and then ask your question or comment.
Sure. Haley Overington, 47 Quarry Street, Lambertville, New Jersey. My question is regarding, and I am speaking for all of us along here that allegedly own this retaining wall, which we never knew about. The question is, the city has not maintained the mountainside, so that has compromised the wall now. So that if
you would have maintained the wall, I mean, the hillside, the wall wouldn't have been compromised. So now, since it's based, 1930, I think the record shows that the city was supposed to maintain it. And since we lived here, I've never seen the city or JCP&L do anything.
So now we have a compromised wall that is a result of the city not maintaining their end of, what they needed to be doing. So now that wall
falls on us.
So I can answer that, and then we're happy to also, discuss this with our chief legal counsel. And but unfortunately, the way that particularly in storms, sort of everything affects everything, right? How things interconnect with one another is an important part of how storms affect various properties. But unfortunately, that doesn't create jurisdictional responsibility for property owners to fix other folks' property, right? So that's also true, for instance, that this municipality of West Amwell had, we have a significant number of rocks from West Amwell that are clogging up Swan Creek right now, but we can't say that because West Amwell wasn't maintaining their side of Swan Creek, or for instance, they didn't have strong enough stormwater management systems in their developments, that they have to pay for our property damage.
So John, are you saying that the fixes that will be done, are you saying the structure of that wall is still sound?
It appears sound. Yeah, it hasn't. I mean, from the time we saw the tree system that was over it removed, yeah, obviously that helped a lot, but it's not totally repositioned, I'm going to say. Yeah, there is parts of it where it's lower at the top, but I don't see evidence of it working its way progressively towards the street since it's happened.
So the remediation that the city is going to take when they can, will that help the structure of that wall?
Yeah, I think it will. So, because and is this Haley still?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And my husband is also here, Nate Waldron.
Yeah. So what we envisioned, we were talking about kind of like evening out the grade back here. And the other thing is, we want to make sure we're doing is we're filling behind this wall too, because what we don't want is this erosion to work its way behind the wall. Once it gets behind the wall, then you're going to get more forces pushing and kind of working its way over the top here. We want to keep it where it's filled to the top of this wall to serve the initial purpose. And, from what I've seen, I think, and part of our kind of our design remediation repair here is to stabilize behind the wall as much as possible with that fill. So Haley, I think that answers, hope to answer your question that it would help it. I mean, while the contractor's out there, again, he's going to work from the street side. I think it's inevitable that he comes in contact with this wall, right? He's working behind it. I would envision a cleanup effort also to get some of this garbage or the excess soil remnants off there. Or even adding some of the stone behind it so it's more even. So
this is Nate Waldron. I have a question. So if you guys are, doing the work and additional damage is done to the wall, then are we responsible for that, or would the city now be responsible for that? Because now you're working on and around so-called private property.
Cindy, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, typically, Nate, what would happen is you would report it to your insurance company, and your insurance company would, it goes from your insurance company to our insurance company. Same thing could happen with this wall.
Yeah.
You could report it to your insurance company collectively.
With
then-
us, Cindy, there's nothing on our deed that says that we own that.
There is a
There's nothing.
separate, there is a separate deed for that, and you're all mentioned in it.
All
I
right,
think,
we don't have that then.
okay, I can
I've never seen
email
it.
that.
Okay,
Haley, I think I have your email address, but I'll
Mhm.
email that deed, and I will try and scan the best that I can and
Okay.
send you what I have, okay?
okay.
And I understand that this is frustrating here. Unfortunately, we can only do the work that we're permitted to do by FEMA and the state. If we take on any jurisdictional responsibility of private property, then it opens up a can of worms for other
Yeah.
properties with similar issues.
Had I known, I would have, with the deed, I would have went through FEMA, because now isn't all of that closed now where we have no access to FEMA?
So you still have access to individual assistance claims, and FEMA understands that this is a part of the process. We just found out, we've been doing our background research on this for several weeks
Mhm.
at this point. And so if you do have an individual an individual claim that you put in for this damage, the city will work with you to advocate to FEMA for any exceptions or extensions that you may need based on this damage.
And I think as a group, we should probably all the neighbors on this block should all form together and then piggyback it with the city.
And what I'll do is I'll loop you in with this gentleman. His name is Mike Gerber. He works for NJ OEM, and he helps us, and he's there also to help applicants.
I think Gerber is just PA, Cindy, but our friend, I'm sorry, that blonde woman whose name I'm blanking on right now.
Colleen.
Colleen.
Colleen's his boss.
Colleen is the one who has a PA and IA overlap.
Cindy, if you could also send that to Stephanie Vollmer. She's kind of been spearheading everything for us as
Absolutely.
the 5 units here. But I just want to let you know that these 5 units, it's not a homeowners or association, anything formed here. We're all 5 individual owners. So there's never been a homeowners association formed for these units. So
we are aware that there isn't a homeowners association.
Okay.
And it's funny the way the deed is worded, but I will see that I'll send it to Haley and Stephanie. If anybody else wants it, please contact me, and I'll be happy to share it.
we'll share it with the others.
And then but my recommendation is to reach out first after you get that deed, to reach out first to FEMA. And if they deny your claim, then the city can work with you to advocate for it. But we do need a claim denial in order to sort of help move the ball forward.
All right.
Are there any other questions specific to the work that we're going to be doing when we're starting, anything like that? We've got Stephanie Vollmer here.
I don't know if I know she might have been.
She's here. We're pulling her up now. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi from Maine. My question has to do with, I'm just curious about the easement. And I wondered, maybe Cindy, if you could also send Haley and me the information about the maintenance easement for that hillside that I think is from the 1930s, that I'm curious about whether it's a specific part of that hillside, you know, where the homeowner at the top of the hillside where his maintenance ends and the city's begins.
The conservation easement you're talking about.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah,
exactly what
okay.
it's called.
Yeah, so the JCP&L has a maintenance easement. We have a conservation easement. Those two things are different.
Got it.
And then but that doesn't mean that the property owner has also relinquishes all of their own maintenance requirements. So if, there are different tranches that how that hill has gotten split up based on our responsibilities.
Okay, yeah, I think if it's possible to share any of that, if it's public record, I just think it would be helpful for all of us to understand it, should this happen again.
It would be helpful for us if you filled out an Oprah request for that, rather than
Okay.
having Cindy produce those documents, just to request the documents through our Oprah process, and Cindy will get them to you in reasonable time. Just good for us to have a record of that request.
Yeah, no problem. I'll be glad to do that, and I'll email you about that, Cindy. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions specific to the type of maintenance that we're planning on doing or any of the other work? Oh, we have Paul Stevens. And if you've had your question answered, if you can put your hand down, that'd be helpful.
Good evening, everybody. Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry. I know you're focusing on the near term as you should be right now. I guess I was just curious though, if longer term, are there any plans for, first off, cleaning up Swan Creek some, because now there's big chunks of pavement from Curly Lane and that sort of thing in the bed. And as you mentioned, there's been a lot of debris that's come down. We've tried to clean up what we can, but clearly we can't get some of this stuff out of there.
Yes. So we've been working with the USDA and through a program called the NCRS program, which helps basically subsidize that type of river cleanup, the restructuring of the riverbed, of the river sides, and then the dredging of specific areas where either homes or critical infrastructure are close enough to those banks. So we've already started the process of that application. And we're hopeful that we're a good candidate specifically for Swan Creek. We brought them around to all four of the waterways that were significantly affected by Ida, but Swan Creek is an excellent applicant for that process. So we are working on that, and they're aware that we are considering this emergent. We also have been advocating directly with the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection to put aside several $1 million for Ida communities in the new federal, as the new federal cash starts to flow out from Washington into New Jersey for Ida relief, that stream bed cleanup and restoration be a part of that money, and they've given us a verbal confirmation that that's in their request.
That's very good. Thanks for that information, Mayor. And let me know if there's anything that we can do to help with that process, if you need letters or whatever.
Unfortunately, everybody knows that this is a major problem for us, but unfortunately, the reality is that we are Lambertville, although it feels like we're not doing a lot, Lambertville is working at lightning speed in comparison to federal cleanup efforts, how federal cleanup efforts normally go. And so this is really just a waiting game from, the Congress and the feds for releasing that money back into the state.
That's fine. I just want to, volunteer. If I could help, I would. All right. So thanks a lot for all the efforts there, gang. I really do appreciate it.
Okay. And I think Haley has another question, Cindy.
Hey, Haley.
Hi, yeah, Haley Overington, 47 Quarry Street. Does that piggybacking off of Paul, does that include tree cleanup too along the creek? Trees that are roots are exposed, leaning, and will fall at a blow at a sneeze.
We did ask about that. It depends. It's sort of a tree by tree.
Case by
The
case
reality is
scenario.
it's
Yeah.
tree by tree right now, right? Because
Mhm.
it's the process of this, of the way that this works is about whether or not the bank, the riverbank, or the damage is close to critical infrastructure, close to a
Right.
house, close to whatever, a well.
Right.
And so, we and Mayor-elect Noack was with us. The OEM team went out and walked the entirety of Swan Creek, and we really went, sort of foot by foot, saying, well, here's why we think that this is in critical infrastructure. So
Right.
John is putting together that plan right now. Some of those trees may be addressed by that, by the bank stabilization, some may not, and
Okay.
it's just sort of the way that the cookie crumbles.
Okay. No, we did, Nate and I did see Officer Brown out back over on Curly with who we assume was somebody from the DEP, looking where those two houses are now gone and the water flow there, because that's a huge concern, obviously, because where's that water go? Now that the houses are gone, it just goes over the top of the land. So, and that's all aiming towards this way and on the other side of the creek as well. So that's a big concern, but we did see him out there with people. So that was encouraging. Forgive me, but I missed when you anticipate the work on the slope and the behind the retaining wall to start. I know it will be not right now. In the spring, did you say?
No, so we are moving quickly to get through the bid process.
Right.
And once the bid process is out, then the council will appoint at the earliest possible
Okay.
convenience there, and hopefully we'll be in the next 6 to 8 weeks be
Okay.
able to begin to start work.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. I missed that part of it.
No problem. And Stephanie, I think this will be our last question.
Okay, hi, thanks. So I'm just quickly moving to the long-term question. So I know that the city engineer said that there's sort of long-term remediations that have to happen on that hillside, root systems, et cetera. What can we as residents do? Maybe I should address this to the mayor-elect, but what can we as residents do to help make sure this doesn't sort of fall off the radar in terms of bringing in horticulturalists and others who might be able to figure out what needs to happen on that hillside for a 2 to 5 to 20-year solution for it?
I know that you addressed this directly to the mayor-elect, and
Oh.
I'm happy to allow him to answer, but I do just want to say here, this isn't going to fall off the radar. We've already put in requests to FEMA for the long-term solutions for each of these critical areas that were affected by Ida. So this, we are doing this in 2 tranches, the immediate emergent work and then the long-term work, but all of those long-term projects were due already to FEMA. So you're not going to just sort of fix this in the short term and forget about it. We are already in the process of applying for FEMA reimbursement on projects that we're going to be scheduling out over the next 18 months.
Okay, great. That's so helpful. I didn't understand that when you first explained it, and that's wonderful. So again, just to reiterate what Paul said, if you need any help from residents in any part of this process, letters, et cetera, we're here.
I think, Stephanie, you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and you all are, which is reaching out to the mayor when you feel like you haven't heard anything, to ensure that that meetings like this continue to happen, and that we're working on communicating with you while we work actively behind the scenes to ensure that that these problems get solved.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And we do have another community meeting, so I'll take one more question and then we gotta head out of here.
Sorry, Haley Overington again. I know this is a quickie.
No, it's totally fine.
Once you start working on the remediation of the hill and the wall, perhaps John, this is a question to you. Will whoever looks at that wall let us know if there's imminent danger, or if we do need to do something? Do we need to get an engineer out here to look at it and do we wait till the work is done? Do we wait till what you work what you guys are doing is done, and then we look into what we need to do, how should we handle that?
We'll be in communication with you as we appoint and now I am actually speaking for the mayor-elect, so I'll let him jump in if he's got anything else to say. But the city will be in communication with you once a contractor has been approached. That contractor very likely is going to have an opinion on what this on what the wall needs. If there is simultaneous work to be done, the city you can come in as a secondary bidder or a secondary sort of Cindy, help me out with the words here. You can ask for your own scope of work with that contractor, and while they're on the hill, they can address it. But right now, John's job is to figure out how we're remediating issues on our own property. When we've gotten that contractor, that will be a possibility. We'll also make sure that the construction official comes in to take a look at that wall and ensure that there isn't any imminent danger.
Okay.
And
maybe
on all sides, you're going to be hearing from the
okay,
city.
so once maybe you decide who it is going to be going over there, they could meet with us, the head of the project could meet, and John, you all could have him, and Andrew, you could all have a meeting with us.
If
to
the
look at-
contractor is a viable, if there's an opportunity for the contractor to do that work, it may be a landscape contractor rather than
Okay.
so we'll,
Okay,
once the city has made a decision on who the contractor is,
okay,
I'm sure that the mayor at that time will be communicating with you.
okay. Since
Yeah,
none of
and
us
just
have
one
any
other thing,
experience
just
on
one other
retaining walls, this is all totally new for us, so.
Of course.
Yeah, and just one other thing to add, just to reiterate the mayor's point, while that contractor is out there, there'll be a coordination effort amongst the community as to when this is going to happen, how it's happening, the timing. And the fact that he has to work around that wall here to kind of do his stabilization, he's going to have some opinions to us on if anything is noted or seen, so we can kind of be on the same page here.
Okay,
And so I just want to throw that out there, that it
Thank
will be
you.
coordinating together.
thanks.
Okay, Mayor Fall, are you still with us? Looks like maybe she froze. All right, guys, well, I'm going to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Here she is again. She's back. Okay, Mayor, you just unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I lost my, I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
All right. So I think unless there's anything else, we'll pop to our next meeting here. And I want to thank everybody for joining us on this call. And we'll make sure that we're continuing to communicate with you as we transition into the next administration and into the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice.